Hey everybody, this is Everyday Commentary, and I'm go do a Sweet Stuff Saturday. But before I do, I just wanted to show you, I finally finished the workbench slash outfeed table for my table saw. On my previous shop, it was too small to do an outfeed table, and so I had this with two brackets on it, two spring-loaded brackets that would pop up and hold it. It was never super stable, and I still needed more work surface. So what I did was took a little bit of John McGrath's bench, and a little bit of Rob Cosman's bench, and a little bit of Paul Sellers' bench, and I put them together, and now I got an outfeed table. So you can see it's like super level, super level. Let's try that one more time. Yeah, there you go. That was good. So that's done. And now I'm going to move on to doing some dust collection stuff. But I got the exact same vise that Paul Sellers got, and that vise is awesome. The thing doesn't rack. It's massive. I made the jaws out of maple, and boy, is it tough. Tough. Also, just got this, and boy, is it nice. Oh, plunge base cordless router. I have a Palm router that has a wire, and I was using it, and it knocked over a bunch of drill bits, and it ruined the drill bits, and I was upset, and I said, that's the reason why I need a cordless one. So, sorry for the shop update, but wanted to go through, and before we get to what we're going to talk about, I just wanted to say, if you guys don't like the shop updates, just let me know, and I'll cut them out. But let's get down to the topic of the video. So, when I first started in the knife world, for real, it was early 2004, 2005, sometime around then. And there was a set of knives out there that I'll show you in a second that I thought were among the best. And then there is a set of knives that I think are representative of where we are, 18, 20 years later, that I think are really good as well. So here are the knives that I think are, and I know that this knife was not in existence 20 years ago. And this knife technically was not in existence 20 years ago because it's a different version. But there was the Sebenza, the Cali 3, and the Mini Grip. Now, this is the Sebenza 31 and S45 VN. S45 VN didn't exist. 31 is relatively recent. This is the Mini Grip 555-1. So it did not, 20CV didn't exist, or if it did, it wasn't used in knife steel. And it did not have G10 handles. It still had the FRN handles. The Grivery handles, whatever. But I think these three knives are about as state-of-the-art as you can get. And you might say, this knife is not in the same league as these other two knives. And what I want to point out is the fact that, like, while at the time the materials were 154 CM and Grivery, the design here is really, really excellent. The Mini Grip design is one of the most subtle, super great designs out there. If you look at this knife, you will see that this is a relatively short handle with a relatively large blade. I mean, let's do like blade to blade, pivot to pivot, and you'll see that like that handle and that blade are rough, or that blade is roughly the same. But when you close this up, the handle on the Cali 3 is substantially longer. And so this is one of those knives that I think if you're not paying attention, you're going to just be like, whatever. But the combination of the axis lock, the really great ratios, and then a really good deployment system with a very nice blade shape made, in my opinion, this was the best of the EDC knives under, $200 at the time. If you had an infinite amount of money at the time and you weren't looking at a custom, it was one of these two knives. Now, I know that there are Hinders, and I know that there are Striders, and I know there are Emersons, but this is probably the best knife design in that era, and it is still really, really excellent. The handle is great, the clip is unique, or was unique at the time, and is great, and the blade steel is really, really nice. But I also think that this is probably the best made knife at the time. And it was a really expensive knife, but it was a really, really good knife, and it was very well made. And I think this most recent batch of Sebenzas has, gone back to the very tip top of the market in terms of fit and finish. It's a masterpiece. But that's what it was like, 20 years ago. And here are the knives that I think are the best 3 knives on the market, the production world right now. Now, there are 3 knives here, but I will be very candid and tell you that this really is the best knife on the market right now, the best production knife on the market. This is the TRM Neutron 2. I put a little O-ring there just to make it a little more grippy, so I can, boom, pop that sucker out. This knife is really extraordinary. It's USA made. It's $180. It runs 20 CV steel. It is super thin. It cuts like a kitchen knife. It carries like a dream. It's got a great clip. There's nothing here that I do not like. This knife is just perfect. But I really think that this knife is sort of the equivalent of this knife in the market. That this knife and this knife are like the design. If you really like good design, these are the 2 knives. 20 years ago, you were looking at this knife. And now you're looking at this TRM Neutron 2. In terms of the knife that is really subtly good, I'm going to have to go this knife and this knife are the knives that are really subtly good. Because you don't think about how much engineering and design it takes to make this, essentially invisible in silhouette. Like if you look at just the shadow, there's no flipper here, but there is a flipper, and you can use it in 2 different ways. So you can flip it this way, you can flip it this way, you can flip this knife, and you can even open this knife with a finger flick. There's just like a million good ways to open this knife. The knife also looks really nice, and it's functional. This was one of the better cutters when I was breaking down all the cardboard. This is one of the better cutters that I have, and I think this is just a sign that Joseph Vero is a really, really good knife designer. And it's subtle in the same way that the mini grip is subtle. You're not thinking like, oh, this is the best design knife on the market. But it's a super subtle design. It's, very similar size, by the way, which I think is a good thing because I love the size of the mini grip. And then that leaves me with this knife and this knife. And they are totally different kinds of knives. I don't think the fit and finish is as good on this knife as the most recent generations of Sebenzas. But I also don't think it's bad. I think that it's a different kind of fit and finish. Like, you're going to get super snappy action. You're not going to get super snappy action here. No blade play. The reason I think these knives are, similarly great is because they are so spare in what they do. This knife has, like, maybe 10 parts, maybe 13 if you're worried about the washer and you're counting all the screws. But it is just a really really minimalist design. Like, this is a blind clip. You're not going to see a blind clip very often on a production knife. There are the screws, by the way, but it is a blind clip. The other thing is, this is a liner lock, but it's really just a bar lock. This isn't a liner at all. I mean, you can see right through this knife. Look, let me see if I can get my flashlight out and show you. I mean, look at that. There's no liner there. It's just a bar of steel that's been machined precisely to fit in the right spot and do the right thing. There's not a whole lot of excess or flourish here. In the same way that I don't feel like there's a lot of excess or flourish here. Both make for really great knives. And so it's interesting to look at these knives, the knife market 20 years later, and say, what do we have and what does it do well? And to see that, like, yeah, the market is progressing. The market is getting better. 20 years ago, you had a 154 CM steel, which at the time wasn't a great steel, but wasn't a bad steel. All of these are M390 or 20 CV. Good steel. So all over here, you're getting really, really nice steel. The other thing that's interesting about how the market has evolved over time is that these knives were really focused on, no flippers. These knives, there's a lot of flipping action on the market, and I don't think it's a bad thing. Quite frankly, I think this flipper is probably as good a design as you'll ever see. And this one ain't too bad either, I don't like traditional flippers as much as I like front flippers, but this functions like a traditional flipper, and it functions like a front flipper, which is why that's the best flipping design. So, really good knives, very interesting. These two are made in China. This one's made in America. This one's made in Japan. These two are made in America. So, you know, a little bit of a difference in geography, but really a good look at what was great 20 years ago, what's great today in the knife market.